Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Johnston? Here. Mr. Nail?
Here.
Mr. Menuda? Ms. Wilcox? Here. Mr. Scrivener? Here. Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose. Matter being confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review of programs and placements of students with disabilities, and collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, NTA, CSCA, NASA, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Nail?
Yes.
Ms. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivener?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes. We will return at 6:45. So we're going to begin. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Dia.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, everyone. Before we start tonight's board meeting, I'd like us to, for a second, keep a colleague, a peer, a professional. If we can keep her in our thoughts. One of our teachers was in a very severe car accident and needed to be airlifted to Westchester Medical. She's in critical condition right now, and so if I could ask you to just take a moment of silence, just keep her in our thoughts and prayers. She's working really hard right now to improve her condition, and we're seeing good signs, so I'm hoping our energy tonight helps her the rest of the way. Thank you. So we're going to move forward, and again, thank you for that, and ask that you continue to keep Ms. Bonestill in your thoughts and prayers. In our board meetings, for those of you who are new, we take time out to honor our scholars, and that's very important to us. We have student leaders across our district, and in addition to our Student Advisory Council, which is a new initiative to promote one of our core values around leadership and ensure that our students have a platform to use their voice and share ideas, provide critical feedback to our staff and administrators. This evening, I'd like to take a moment to recognize one of our scholars from NFA West. So I'm going to have Ms. Clark and Ms. Key, if you guys can come up for a second. So one of our scholars from NFA West is being recognized nationally. And I'm going to let them just share a little bit about that, and then we'll recognize her publicly.
So Evelyn Reyes, an 11th grader at NFA West. Evelyn?
Ms. Clark, can you just go to the microphone?
Oh, apologize.
I'm sorry.
Good evening. Evelyn Reyes, an 11th grader at NFA West, entered a national Habitat for Humanity photography and essay contest about Newburgh. And Evelyn wrote a very passionate essay, as well as some pictures that she submitted to this photography contest. Evelyn won for her category, which was 17 years old and younger. She won this national award based on over 1,000 people who entered. And Evelyn wrote about her time at NFA West and how it changed the course that she was on academically. And we had a press conference at NFA West covered by Habitat for Humanity and the press. And we wanted to congratulate Evelyn publicly this week.
So Ms. Reyes, Chair?
Yes.
Yep, if you can come up. Ms. Mineo and I are going to join you here in the front and just give you a certificate of appreciation for representing us nationally. She just got back from Atlanta. So I'd love to hear all about that.
2, 3. One, 2, 3. Thank you.
And we would like to recognize Ms. Nina to take a picture at this time. She's our art teacher who encouraged her to enter the contest. So we got a free trip to Atlanta last week. Atlanta. Thank you very much.
The next recognition is going to go to several middle school students who had an amazing display of science a few weeks ago. So I'm going to ask our phenomenal science teacher from Heritage, Ms. Toback, to please come to the microphone, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Elaine Toback. I'm the lead science teacher at Heritage Middle School. This is Mr. Edward Petrie. I would like to thank Dr. Dia, Board Ed, and Central Administration for taking the time to recognize our junior scientists. They are truly amazing. When I began this endeavor 13 years ago, I never dreamt what the students would bring to the table, what they would accomplish. This past year, we have had science fair projects from engineering, architecture, microbiology, water testing, environmental science, and that's just to name a few. They worked 3 months independently, had to develop a hypothesis, follow the steps of the scientific method, and then present their projects to fellow students, high school students, of the National Junior Science Honor Society, which you can imagine is not an easy task. They did an amazing job. So tonight we're here to recognize the winners, not just the first, second, and third places, but the honorable mentions, and to let them know how incredibly proud we are of all the work they did, how hard they worked, the support of their parents, and how much we appreciate everything they do to make our school an amazing place. So without further ado, first place in 8th grade goes to Robert Morabito. Alexander McDermott, and obtaining honorable mention for 8th grade. For obtaining honorable mention in 8th grade, Michelle Wang. Honorable mention for 8th grade, Julian Johnson. Honorable mention for 8th grade, Achille Antonelli. First place in 7th grade, Zachary Don. Second place in 7th grade, Ryan Kahn. Third place in 7th grade, Isabel Aviles. Honorable mentions, Megan Cameron, 7th grade. Honorable mention, 7th grade, Dana Cubis. Honorable mention, 7th grade, John Iliadis. grade, Carly Perono. Honorable mention, 7th grade, Roberto Reed. Through 6th grade, first place, Nicholas Newby. Second place, 6th grade, Dylan Murillo. Third place, 6th grade, Jackson Burvis. Honorable mention, 6th grade, Manny Tejeda. Honorable mention, 6th grade, Isabella Delgado. Honorable mention, 6th grade, Logan Rowe. Honorable mention, 6th grade, Inez O'Shea. And honorable mention, 6th grade, Allison Shapiro.
One more. 1, 2, 3. And again. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
You guys did such an amazing job. We are so appreciative.
Young scientists in action, thank you so much for representing our district in such a positive way. Madam President, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
It's okay.
We're going to move right on to the first resolution. It's public discussion. We are now at the section of the agenda for public discussion and comment on the agenda. Please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comment that is posted next to the sign machine. We have no one signed up, but would anybody like to address the board on agenda items?
We have more recognitions.
Since I have no one, I'm going to move on to resolution 3.1, the resolution in support of public education. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Johnston? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda? Yes. Ms. Prokop? Yes. Mr. Iron? Yes. Mr. Sabano? Yes. Ms. Zambito?
The next item is not on the agenda, but I have this announcement. Mr. Cupertino has resigned from the board. His letter of resignation can be foiled and made available by contacting the district clerk. That's all my items. I'm going to move on to Dr. Padilla and the 2017-18 draft budget.
Okay, found it. All right, so good evening. Tonight is an opportunity for me to present my final recommended budget to the Board of Education. And I just want to start off by first thanking my team. I have required a lot of them, a lot of energy, a lot of time. A lot of effort has gone to putting this budget together. And this is never one person doing something to this extent, this kind of endeavor. So I just want to express my sincere appreciation to my team. I also want to start off by sharing my appreciation to the Board of Ed. We have had several budget discussions over the last several weeks, and I have to just publicly recognize you for your knowledge, your critical questions, all of which provided my team and I opportunities to go back, rethink things, and put together ultimately what we feel is a very, very good budget for the upcoming school year. I also want to express some frustration with the fact that our legislators did not come and approve a state budget. That has severe consequences for school districts, and it certainly has severe consequences for this district. And on behalf of the children and families and employees of this district, I have to publicly share my frustration with the fact that an agreement was not made and ultimately will impact school districts across the state. Nevertheless, our district, as well as the other 700 school districts in the state, are bound by law to submit critical information to the state by April 21st. Irrespective of whatever the governor's office gets out. And at this point, we understand that an extension was made to May 31st, well beyond the point this board has to approve a budget and submit to the state. So with that said, there's a lot to be excited about regarding this budget and the plan that we put together for you, for your consideration, for a public vote on April 18th. So it should just be noted that tonight there's no vote expected. This is yet just another opportunity to engage in a very fruitful, insightful conversation about our plan to support our scholars in the district. So I just want to bring your attention to the budget timeline. When I first presented the budget, we said this was an interactive process. You can see the many times that we've engaged with you around the budget. We did strike out March 14th because due to weather, that was not an opportunity that the board had to engage in a conversation publicly about the budget. Nevertheless, there were and still remains opportunities, and tonight is such. Okay, who's going to be mine? Ed, is that you? All right, thank you. So our deputy is going to be my key person here to get to the next slides. So as I indicated, the budget, this very robust budget filled with so many complexities, is ultimately a plan. That's what the budget is. It's a plan. And like we know with all great plans, you have to monitor it, you have to modify along the way because new information becomes available. So let's just keep that at the forefront. None of us has a crystal ball. We can do our very best to predict things, but nevertheless, things will come up. Like they do every single year that we have to then make decisions and modifications to our plan. So the only other thing I want to mention around this is that our district, in many ways, has become a model for how to create plans that have coherence and alignment to the vision, the mission, and ultimately our 5-year strategic plan. I mean, we really are hitting the mark when it comes to this. No one is throwing a dart, throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. These are very intentional decisions around key priorities that we have communicated year after year, and we are staying true to that. And for that reason, again, I thank my team for their diligence in making sure we stay true to that, and I appreciate the board's recognition that we go about it this way. So the next piece of this is ultimately the heart and core of tonight's conversation. So we have taken feedback from the board, we've sat with their questions, we've gone back to the drawing board and said, okay, so our board is saying this, our community stakeholders are saying that, our teachers and administrators are requesting A, B, and C. How do we continue to support these needs while keeping in alignment with our strategic blueprint? So, Mr. bring up the attachment. It's our FTE breakdown. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the additions and then positions that are being abolished or repurposed. So the first one is around supervisor of information technology, and this is to support our ongoing efforts to make sure our digital convergence is something that is live, something that is dynamic, and something that truly propels us in a direction where we become trailblazers in technology. And so to do that, we want to make sure we have the right people in place. And so we are proposing the addition of a supervisor of information technology that would fall under the supervision of our executive director of information and technology. I should also mention, before I go any further, that this is divided up into two parts. You have at the top positions that will be added to the upcoming budget, and then underneath it, you have positions eliminated and repurposed. To the very right, you have an FTE breakdown, so that way you can see, in fact, which positions, how many positions, the budget impact, and what bargaining unit the positions either are added, abolished, or repurposed. Okay. Several weeks ago, our Executive Director of Exceptional Learners, Mr. Baer, provided you with a presentation regarding our reorganization of exceptional learners. You gave him very good feedback. You seem to appreciate the presentation and where we're going with our exceptional learners. We're making a lot of progress in this area. And again, I just want to reiterate that this team is working very hard. And as a result of these efforts, we should and are expecting to be in full compliance with special ed by June 30th. No easy feat, and this team is making it happen. E&L, bilingual support. Again, in my initial presentation, we spoke about this. This is to get us closer to being in compliance with Part 154. So we are recommending the continuation of those 4 positions. The board, in one of our budget discussions, stressed the need to make sure we were getting literacy and mathematics supports for K-1-2. I consider that a doubling down on our investment efforts that we've made so far. I am in full support of this, and this is one of my key priorities for the upcoming school year by way of 4 primary specialists. These will be teachers on special assignment that will be in classrooms teaching and supporting students and teachers in grades 1, K-1-2. They will only be in classrooms that are K-1-2. It's very important that I emphasize that. In addition to that presentation that Mr. Baer provided, he gave an organizational structure to that division. Again, hence the Director of Exceptional Learners. We already have one. That person would be repurposed for K-5. The new director would be a secondary director of exceptional learners, so in alignment with that and moving in the direction of least restrictive environment by way of state regulation and mandate, we're recommending the addition of special ed teachers. More excitement, we have the recommendation for the addition of 2 CTE positions, CNA and emergency management. To support the work in exceptional learners, we're recommending a school counselor facilitator, and this would be a teacher on special assignment. In past weeks, we spoke about computer micro technicians. This is an effort to allow our ITFs to coach and support the transition of technology in the district. Not to the individuals who are doing the technical work of setting up computers, laptops, devices, interactive boards. That would be the work of the technicians. So what we're doing is creating a model where each ITF will have a 1-to-1 ratio with the technician. And so you have already approved several of these micro techs throughout the year. This would allow us, this additional 3 would allow us to have that 1-to-1 ratio for the upcoming school year. We've had discussions around safety. We are recommending the addition of one more FTE for security purposes. This would be equivalent to the current senior district monitor that we currently have in place. So it's a +1. And at this moment, we would consider placing that person at South Middle. So one person would be housed at South Middle, the other will continue to be housed at NFA Main, our largest building. There was a lot of discussion around ITFs and whether or not we should move to a 1-to-1 school ratio. I continue to believe strongly that the model that we have in place today is the right model to have. We want to create interdependence. We don't want to create that. We don't want to create dependence of our ITFs doing the work. We need to build the capacity of our teachers to lead technology in the classroom. Our current model is much more than what current districts have. But nevertheless, we heard you and certainly see the benefit of adding one more ITF specifically to NFA Main. As our largest building, they currently only have one. We have the need for dual language teachers in 2 of our elementary schools as their programs continue to advance. So that would be one at Fostertown and the other at Temple Hill. There's a need for bilingual teachers, one at Meadow Hill and one at Gardnertown. Our NFA West program is also building capacity and scale. And so we want to be able to offer the students at that building foreign language. And then last, but not least for the additions portion, we want to repurpose the science specialists at GAMS. And as their team works on the new theme and focus and the transformational work that has to take place there, we want to be able to afford them the opportunity to bring on someone who will align with the new focus of the school. So I'll stop there, at least to hear questions, comments, and then we'll proceed to the second half.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Menuda?
So with regard to the microtext, we had a very good discussion last time in that each school have a person assigned to it. So we talk about 1-to-1, but we're talking 1-to-1 for a person that is already employed. So I guess my question is very clearly, do we have a person in each school or not?
So we don't have an ITF per school for every school. Some schools have it based on their size. But we will have with this model, every ITF, every instructional technology facilitator will have their own micro technician. So there will be a 1-to-1 that way. Yeah.
So I don't want to be the dead horse here, but to the extent that if there's a technical problem in the school has to go out until that person can get to the school. I see that no different, and forgive the parallel here, but I see that no different than a child who's injured and needs to go to the nurse. It needs to be done because without that correction, the rest of the day is potentially lost, and that's my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Marie. I hear you, and we're working to address technology concerns in the district. At least with the model that we're putting forward, it will be much more efficient than we currently have because the micro technicians will be housed in those buildings along with their ITF. So they're in the building much more than they are currently in our new model. Is it to the extent, the example that you shared? No, I don't think we'll have someone just shoot right to a classroom next period. It could if that person is actually in the building, but when they're shared across 2 buildings, they'll have to leave one building and go to the next. So I think this is something that we can eventually build on. If maybe next year's budget, I could certainly see a rationale and purpose to bring on even more technicians. And maybe that's something we strongly consider. So Sheriff, if you want to make note of that, I think that would be a way to offset some of the breakdowns that we have with equipment if we had more micro-techs.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Stridarn?
Where would this, the TOSA school counselor facilitator primarily work?
I'll let Mr. Forger or Mr. Bear chime in on that one.
Primary location would be at the high school level, so one of the three campuses. But also they have coordination of middle level supports for counseling. And then there's also the integration of the work that Ms. Green is doing with the social workers. So predominantly at the high school, obviously we want to make sure that we're tracking credit accumulation and progress towards graduation. But we also want to build the capacity at the middle level to accelerate that rate when they get there.
Ms. Manero, you on balls? I see your light blinking.
I started to panic for a moment. Are there any other questions or comments? I would like to make a comment. I support what Mr. Menuda said, so there's a second for that. And I really want to say thank you for looking at the primary specialists, because you know that's my big push. And I really think that the earlier that we get kids literate in math and in reading, the better off we are. So next year, more of those two, please. Yes, Mr. Sterling?
I'll agree with Mr. Miller and yourself for the ITFs at the individual buildings to have one in each building. I know that it's a difference in philosophy, but I believe to actually have somebody in the building when it's needed is important.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I'm going to proceed to the second half. So these are positions that are eliminated, abolished, or repurposed. So the first being the Director of School Safety. Kind of see this as a FTE wash, so we're going up a monitor, but we're going down a director. We have posted for this position and haven't had much luck. So we're going to continue with our current model under Mr. Velez, but bring on an additional FTE. So again, it's a plus one in terms of security, but we would repurpose the position of director for that school monitor position. Again, Mr. Bear presented on this, but just as a point of recollection, we're going to go up a director under the new model for exceptional learners in the form of a director, but we're going to go down one of the 5 supervisors. So this would give us 2 directors, one for elementary, one for secondary, and 4 supervisors of exceptional learners. We're going to abolish the teacher on special assignment for RTI. That would leave us with a behavioral specialist and 1 other TOSA. We are going to recommending the abolishment of a program analyst. For teaching assistants, we currently have 6 teaching assistants that are retiring. So these 6 abolishments are not teachers who are being laid off. They're just positions that are not being filled because we are repurposing those positions to get more special ed positions to enhance our ICT model. The CTE positions that were discussed in the above portion, we were able to make that happen because we had money encumbered, and so you'll see a wash of funds there. Reluctantly, we're going to recommend the elimination of instructional coaches. We currently have 2, one at Mill Hill, one at Temple Hill. And as much as we didn't want to do this, we recognize the need for the primary specialists. So by going down to instructional coaches, we're able to increase the amount of primary specialists that we feel is critical. And maybe this is something that we can put back in the budget in subsequent years. So in order to add an additional ITF, we're going to make that possible by eliminating the instructional technology specialist. So that's already a teacher on special assignment, and we are repurposing that position to create more support as you heard from Mr. Menuda. We are repurposing 3 teachers from Windsor School. And so those positions there, you'll see there's 3. We're going to repurpose them throughout the district. I mentioned the science specialist at AMS. Based on their new focus, we're going to keep a specialist in place, but just repurpose that with a different focus. And then the last 2 lines is just to be very transparent with the board on how we were able to make some of these things happen by moving funds from various lines.
Questions or discussion? Ms. Prakash?
Yes. Again, I'd like to thank you and your team for your due diligence in this study. I do have a request. If you could look back at the elimination of instructional coaches, specifically, I know at Meadow Hill, which is the 2nd largest school in the district, student-wise, that we kind of look at that again and see if we can do something to keep the instructional coach there, because I know that person does a bevy of things and takes a little bit of the burden off some of the assistant principals and what they do with their teams and what they're doing their work. So I'd like to, if we could look at that again, because I think they would be in dire straits without that, which is the 2 administrators out there, or 2 assistants.
Do other board members feel the same way?
We're getting a nod from Mr. Menuda.
Yes.
All right, I mean, we recognize.
Would you like me to serve it?
No, it's not, I don't think it's necessary. I just feel, and I mean, I started off by saying that reluctantly we're recommending this, but we do recognize the need. And so if there's a way to not do it, we'll certainly take another crack at it. And that's the point of tonight's conversation, is kind of get your feedback, help you understand our rationale and thinking. I mean, this is a really good budget. We understand in any budget, whether there are dire straits or one in which we're in a good financial position, there's still tough decisions that need to be made. So, thank you, Ms. Prakash.
Any other questions or discussion, Mr. Menuda?
So I realize the vision that you are modifying, not refilling certain positions and modifying and refocusing others. And I get that. And any good institution has to evolve and has to evolve those positions to what's current and what's happening. I guess what I'm asking is, based on the level of information that you have to date and your cabinet who has put all of this together, that in moving these positions in different ways and refining them, that in the best opinion of all involved, that this is in the best interest of our children and our education system here in Newburgh schools.
So I really appreciate the question. This is our best thinking. We recognize that there's more we can do, but obviously it's all within a budget. This will allow us to continue to advance the district, absolutely.
Mr. Stritter?
Elementary education teachers at New England schools. If you eliminate 3 positions, what does that do to the class size? And just explain what your thinking is regarding removing 3 teachers from New England schools.
Yeah. So I'm just going to look at my team. Do any of you have the school board? Just because I'd like to share the numbers. So these are teachers that we considered 2 years ago as bridge teachers. They were general education teachers who were supporting the class size then when the tower was not being put in use. So based on our latest calculations, we're able to repurpose those teachers because the class sizes for next year are in really good shape. So we're just going to read that aloud so that way you guys have that information.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. That was going to be my question. Thank you.
Everyone stare at that.
Sing for me. So currently, kindergarten in New Windsor has 4 sections with a total of 80 students for an average class size of 20. There are 4 teachers in grade 1 with an average class size of 18. There are 4 teachers in grade 2 with an average class size of 21. 3 teachers in grade 3 with an average class size of 24. And then grade 4 is an average class size of 25, and grade 5, an average class size of 24.
So if you eliminate 3 teachers, is that going to bump those numbers up?
So I believe those are additional teachers from when we eliminated those classrooms and pushed those teachers in. So they're not reflected in those numbers of teachers on the scoreboard. So those are in addition to, they help in each of the different classrooms in each of the grade levels to reduce the class size because we reduced the classroom space. The numbers of teachers will not be reduced. So right now, I believe we have 4 in kindergarten, 4 in first grade, 4 in second grade, 3 in third grade, 3 in fourth grade, and 3 in fifth grade. We will still have those same numbers.
So we took classes out of New Windsor over the past years to make that happen, but these were 3 bridge teachers, as we call them.
Mr. Newman?
So on that note, there's really 2 things that are important to me. Number 1, are we increasing the class sizes of those grades by elimination of those 3 positions? I'm not sure that I have clarity on that.
Specifically, no.
Thank you. 2, with respect to the classrooms that they are occupying, do those classrooms meet the minimum requirements for square area per student and adult in the classroom to occupy those, say, 25 or more, because we're an average per classroom?
I would defer that to Mr. Velez.
Yes. They meet the requirement.
Thank you.
We looked at the classroom job, and as you know, you can put up to 30 kids in a classroom 700 square feet, and we bounce the numbers, we are within those square footage per student.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Just remember, these were pushed in. They were in addition to what's there.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes,
Mr.
I have a
Johnson?
question. I'm a little confused, but perhaps that clarified. So the 3 positions, just to clarify, there are actually people hired in these positions currently this school year. Is that correct? Correct. But they're not counted in the scoreboard in the number of teachers. Is that correct as well?
Yes, because if you remember when we eliminated the number of classrooms at New Windsor School, we did not eliminate the number of teachers within that school. What we did was, because we were merging classrooms together, we said that we would keep them flexible to maintain an average class size, so that if a class size had a bubble of 28 or 29 or 30 students, that additional teacher would be able to go in and co-teach general ed teacher to general ed teacher with that particular population. Those are not counted on the current scoreboard. That was an agreement we had with the Board of Education that we could maintain those positions when we removed the use of the classrooms from the tower. Therefore, as I said, the scoreboard doesn't change. Those numbers, we will still have 4 sections of kindergarten, meaning 4 teachers at kindergarten next year, even with the removal of the 3 teachers. We will still have 4 teachers in first grade, 4 teachers in second grade, 3 at third, 3 at fourth, and 3 at fifth.
And just if I could follow up with just one other question. Was there any consideration given to the schools where the average number of students in the kindergarten classroom might be greater than 20?
just at our last meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, we're still doing that analysis. We understand that there are, based on, that information and the follow-up that we've engaged in, that's not the norm. There seems to be a few classes that have more than 20. So I think when we look at our kindergarten registry, our students in kindergarten next year, we have to just make sure that across the district, that there's no classroom more than 20. While the goal is 20, we should acknowledge the fact that just a year before that, we had classrooms as large as 28. So we're moving closer to our number, understanding that there still appears to be some classrooms that have 18 while others have 22.
Mr. Strong, did you have a question?
You had mentioned that these teachers are currently pushing teachers. So eliminating these pushing teachers, they're not the students, are these AIS teachers? They're just pushing teachers. So for next year, those classrooms will not have any pushing teachers.
Depends upon the AIS services and supports. That they may have pushing AIS services, but they will not have this extra hand that was created and maintained over the last year.
Do the other schools have the extra hand?
No, Newburgh was the only school that had the additional general ed teacher pushing it.
Just as a general statement about the budget as far as security, I know that we need more security. I know the budget doesn't allow. If somehow after May 30th, the district has more funds, is it possible for the district to use that money for security or other purposes? Or since the budget's already been voted on, the total number, what happens with that extra money?
So I'll give you the short, I'll let Mr. Kern give you the technical finance response to that. But again, part of the frustration is once the board, moves forward with the approval of this budget and we send it to the state and we have our community vote on it, that's our budget. That's our number, regardless of what the state does. Mr. Kern?
It's a good technical term for it. By law, we have to have our tax report card to the state by the 21st of April. There's no extension that is given for that. Our budget is set in stone. We cannot exceed the expense side of the budget. So right now, we're proposing a $267,100,000 budget, not to exceed.
Mr. Fortune?
The only other avenue we would have would possibly be through federal grants or other grants to support that. I do not foresee an additional increase in our title grants this year, but that would be something we could look at.
So the state at this point, no matter what, there's no reason for them to give us any more money. Because if the board already approves the budget, it gets voted on by the public, what's the motivation for the politicians to fight for more money?
So I don't want to tell you to call your local politicians. Perhaps you should call your local politicians.
There are plenty of
I'm
reasons
not
not
being
to use more money.
facetious. It's the reality. You're right. One could ponder what's the motivation to that. I'm not speculating here. I don't, I want to believe in good faith that they're just trying to negotiate their budget and have its roadblocks. I mean, we know what those two of those roadblocks are. Charter school expansion and juvenile justice for 16, 17-year-olds. Right? So we have to now, knowing that that's hanging up the state budget, consider what that means to us as a district. Right? So what if that passes? What's the impact to us and students who return back from the juvenile justice system back into schools? Right? So these are all things that we don't have answers to. We can strategize, we can try to make sure we're in a really good position, but nonetheless, once this is approved and set to the state, that's our budget. I mean, I guess the only alternative is to send it back out to the voters, but what's the likelihood of that happening? I don't think any district would prefer to do that.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Kern?
There is one other option for the budget coming up, is if the board believes that there's going to be additional state aid coming forward, they can appropriate fund balance as an additional revenue item. We do have to present a balanced budget to the public, and we have to show where the revenue is coming from. Right now, our best estimate on state aid is the governor's plan. So that's in order to raise the revenue, we have the ability to appropriate fund balance to the budget.
And we've been conservative, we have been very strict on, you only use fund balance for one-time expenses. So in some ways, one could argue that this is a one-time expense.
Mr. Stritter, do you have any more
I was
questions?
just saying, if we anticipate we're going to say roughly $1 million to the state, and you say we're going to use fund balance, and then the state does give us an additional $1 million, we don't have to use the fund balance.
That's correct, but if they don't give us the money, we don't want to spend the appropriate fund balance as in the budget.
I would say if that's something the board is considering, we would need to know that ASAP.
Is that a consideration for this board? Mr. Johnson?
Do we have a sense that it's likely that the New York State budget eventually agreed to would have some greater amount of aid for the school district? I mean, what's the pattern of the past as far as that goes?
Pattern in the past is it's somewhere between the governor's budget and the next lowest number. The only thing that I can guarantee is that they will get a budget pass sometime this year. I've gone as late as October, trying to figure out a budget on this. I mean, again, if it's not something we're getting from the state, I would recommend that we put it in. If we're going to put it into the budget, we don't get the money from the state, is that we have that we don't spend the money. So we're not spending the appropriate fund balance at that time.
Let me ask, Mr. Shaw, what might be a silly question, but it might be relevant in some way. If the board makes a decision, not that I'm recommending this, well, we don't know when the state's going to approve their budget, and we would want to wait as long as we could, but understand by law we have to submit by a certain date. What if we didn't submit by April 21st?
This has happened in the past, and then there's the potential of not having the May vote, but then you would have only a single opportunity to vote in June.
Yeah, I'm not recommending that, but I want to hear the legal side of it.
Mr. Howard?
Yes, Madam President. I would like to have that conversation around that fund balance issue in regards to safety and security in the buildings. If we were to use that amount, a specific amount, around increasing the number of security guards that we have in our building, I would be interested in having that conversation for that purpose.
Mr. Menuda? No? Okay. Ms. Prakash?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the fund balance issue?
Well, seeing as that I've been here a while, we have had this done before, and we have used fund balance, because we were in such bad straits. What was it, 2010, 2011? And we had to use fund balance, and then when the budget passed, we got it back. So I'm not adverse to it, because we've done it before, especially for teaching positions at that point, we did it.
Mr. Stradone, what's your feeling?
I think it's an option to use as a placeholder in the budget. So that if the state does come back with more money, we don't have to use the fund balance, we can use the funds from the state to support, security or something that we need, because I know we need it. But, and if the state doesn't give the money, we're putting it towards something that, it's not really a one-time, it's a one-time expense, because every year is a one-time expense for items, but I think if we can use it as a placeholder, I think it would help. So,
Mr. Tabano?
If we were to use the money for more teachers, I would say yes. Security,
don't agree with Mr. Straight Eye. I mean, I don't know where he gets his information. But after 30 years at NFA, I think the priority would be more teachers than security if we had to spend the money. So I say no.
Thank you. Mrs. Vito? Yes, Ms. President.
I also agree with Mr. Devon, if we're gonna use fund balance, I would like to see, something that's closer to students than security. I think teachers are, where we have to be.
Mr. Menuda?
Okay, so now that I've heard what everybody else had to say, I'd like to chime in real quickly. Let's say the budget from the state does not meet our expectations. We have to go into fund balance. My bottom line is that our children in the district, the students, the scholars, are taken care of first from an educational standpoint. And so if we have to peel back, we need to peel back in the areas that are not quote-unquote teaching and education driven, so that we ensure that they do not sacrifice, or we're not sacrificing them for the misgivings of the state, which I will agree with you on. I think it is an atrocity that this budget has not been passed, and is a trickle down to each of the 700 districts in the state. To that extent, if we have to peel back, it should not be on the educational and the teachers component of this budget, is my opinion.
So,
Thank you.
I just want to comment to several things here. So, I want to just caution the board that simply, I don't disagree on the importance of safety and security. That's obviously important. But simply adding an additional person, one or two people, isn't really the answer. And, we are adding one in this proposal as of today. What really it's about, and I don't want anyone to take offense to this, but, we have to, at the district, do a better job of identifying our blind spots, improving our camera system in the district, which we're doing through Smart Bond. Actually, the next phase of the Smart Bond that you will be receiving is direct alignment to our security system. That's going to play a huge role. And then on top of that, we have to provide the training and professional development to our current staff so they can be much better at their job. So that's one key piece. And then I just feel I have an obligation to just make sure the board is aware that, the comptroller doesn't look favorably on districts who use fund balance for ongoing expenses. And so when you consider personnel, that's an expense that's annual. It's not one time.
Mr. Stritter?
There was a statement made that the teachers are the closest to the students. Well, sometimes security is the closest to the students. We had a teacher that was involved in a situation where the security, if it was there, would not have been heard. So, security is very important. When a teacher has to become security, that's a problem. So, I think that, having more teachers in the right places is important. Yes, we need that. But we have a security problem, and we have a safety problem, and we have to deal with it. Not saying all the money has to go to security, but we have specific situations we know. And if some can go towards that, I'm for it.
Mr. Tabano, I know you're dying to say something.
I don't agree with him at all. It was one incident. We have thousands of teachers. Most of them could take care of themselves. It was just an unfortunate incident. And they would happen even if there were 20 security around the teachers. It just got in the way, and it was an accident. Accidents happen.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Yes, so when I first made the suggestion in regards to that, it wasn't in lieu of teachers. It was, my concern was security, the safety of the teachers and the students. So to backtrack on that, I know 2 years, the last 2 years, I've asked us to do a security audit. So that we know what we have, what we need, what we don't have, what can we repurpose, what we can resituate, and it hasn't been done yet. So this conversation we're having in regards to security is putting the carpet for the horse, because if we don't do a security audit, outside security audit, from a clean pair of eyes, then we really, like the dog says in tail, we don't know what we need or what we can do to be doing better, to have better security for our teachers and for our students. So I would like that security audit to be done ASAP.
Great. Mr. Menuda, how do you feel about the security audit?
Absolutely 100% agree.
Mr. Johnston, quickly, security audit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Okay,
the
so
team
I'd
is
like to
currently
have,
working
may I
on it.
have a motion, please, to do, have an outside agency perform the security?
So
Wait,
moved.
on. Okay, roll call, Mr. Clerk, we're gonna do it the right way.
Point of order, is there any kind of amount of money you guys not to exceed?
Why don't we just go out for an RFP?
Mr. Kern?
Yes, we have an RFP ready to go on the street.
Yeah, so the team is working on this based on the last conversation. I didn't want you to think that it fell on deaf ears. The team is actually doing it now. Okay, so we'll
Okay.
be getting proposals soon.
So I'm gonna let my clerk have a roll call, and we'll do it the legal Steve way.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Johnston? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop? Mr. Strittmatter?
For the second time, yes.
Mr. Tabano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Madam President, that concludes this presentation.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I do have a question that did not, maybe I missed it. The budget, there is, in the main document here, we're showing, and we've been talking about consistently, 1.04% increase, which is the year-over-year budget. And then when we look to see the levy, we see a 2% increase. Can we have a point of clarification in order for everyone in this audience and all of the board members to understand what that difference means?
So we're going to pull up the PowerPoint. The remaining slides, just so the board can see, the budget's a budget. There's only 1.04%. And Mr. McCoy, if you keep going, you'll see the information that highlights the 2%. And I'll have Mr. Kern just share some more information on that. So can you provide a clear explanation about that, please?
Yeah, the short of it is that the difference is that you're working with larger numbers with budget and smaller numbers with tax levy. The tax levy is at the maximum that we can go to. There's a tax cap, which came up 2% this year. This is very unusual. But it's gone through into the calculation for the tax cap. But the difference of $2.2 million to $110 million is different than the couple $1 million to the $64 million, which is a ratio difference.
Mr. Menuda?
Thank you for that explanation, and I just want to also reiterate that this 2% is the cap that we are mandated. Just please confirm what I'm about to say. 2% is the cap that we're mandated. And this comes on the heels of a 0 increase for the last school year.
The 2% is the maximum that we can go by law. It's, each district will be different. We sat around the table at the business officials meeting, and I heard anywhere from 5.2% tax increase to less to a negative tax increase. So it's district specific as to what that number is going to be. We just happened this year here to be at the maximum amount that's allowed, the CPI is allowed at. Not to be confused that this is our number. Yes, we had a 0 increase last year. We had a small increase that went out to the public. And when the board set the tax rate in August, they decided to take back a couple $1,000s in the increase and go out with a 0. So there's still time for the board to massage that when they set the tax rate in August.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnston?
There's another point that I appreciate a little clarification of. Suppose we adopt the budget as it is here, and it gets approved by the public, but the state comes through, and then he has another $500,000 in aid for the district. Or maybe it comes through and it's $500,000 less aid for the district. Is it clear what we would do in those situations? Is it kind of fixed what would happen?
The item that's fixed is the amount that we go out with as the expenditure side of the budget, as to not to exceed. Our number is $267,100,000. What happens there is that if the board has options, we can, if the budget comes in from the state with more money, and before we set the tax rate in August, the board can use the money from the increase in aid to decrease the tax rate in the budget. The board can use appropriate fund balance to do that also. So there are some options. The only thing you can't do is increase the expenditure amount unless it's done at this point here. That's the point of order. The point I was trying to make is that if the board wants to put a placeholder fund balance to kind of hedge the bet on the state offering us more money, but at the end of the day, if we don't get the revenue in, I'm not inclined to spend it.
Yeah, that was another point that wasn't entirely clear to me. If we had a placeholder, and then the money doesn't come through, what was your point about that? That we would be best off if we did not spend it, and if we found a way to cut that, trim that from the budget?
Oh, this is at this point, here we have a balanced budget. The only reason that we would put that in is if we thought the state was going to give us more money, and at that time there, once the state comes in, then we would add to the budget the priorities that the superintendent would recommend to the board.
And I didn't have a moment to comment on my opinion about the placeholder noting, and I would be agreeable to doing that for something on the order of $500,000 and have it distributed according to the recommendations of the superintendent, or following his recommendations. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Menuda. I want to move on after this.
Sorry, it's a budget. So last year, my point is, we were faced and saddled with unfunded mandates from the state. And given the fact that the budget has not been approved yet from the state, is there any inkling, any thought been given to any potential unfunded mandates that could be coming from the state this year?
We're not getting any new information regarding new unfunded, new mandates that will be unfunded. We're working with the current ones around Part 154. That one we are clear on. That's the extent that we're aware of at this point.
Thank you.
And we're not aware of anything with the charter school giving them more money?
I don't know if I would characterize it as a unfunded mandate, but I think to Ms. Manale's point, there is concern that if the charter school expansion takes place, that it could mean a loss of $300,000 to $350,000 to our current budget that would go towards charter schools. So I'm in contact with the state to find out what does that really mean to us as we have a charter school in our community. Does that mean they're going to take additional funds from our district to offset whatever expectations they have at the charter school? And I'm not getting clear answers yet.
So I'm not going to belabor the issue. I want to make sure we're looking at our blind spots, and that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Stern.
Based on Mr. Johnston's comments, I make a motion that we make a $500,000 placeholder in the budget using fund balance. To use at the discretion of the superintendent.
Second.
Or,
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Johnston? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop? Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Mr. Sabano?
No.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Kern, do me a favor, just make sure we have information on this in the weekly to the board as to what this will look like.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Everybody's nice and tired. So we're going to move on. Thank you, Dr. Medina. We're going to move on to board committee reports. Board and Finance Committee, Mr. Menuda. Okay. How about Ms. Prokop, today's personnel meeting?
Is that today?
Yeah.
Let's see what we do. Just give me a second.
How about this? Everybody stand up and take a break. Minute, male minute.
Approval of RISE appointments, resolution to abolish the senior library clerk and create a library assistant. We approved the July 4th holiday for the summer for the district. We gave them, this summer, we were very magnanimous, we were very generous. July 4th is on a Tuesday, so we gave them Monday off also. So we felt they deserved that. A resolution to create a supervisor of information and technology, talk about the May election inspectors. A resolution to create a Schedule J position for unified sports that we're going to be looking into a little bit more. We also have a resolution up tonight for substitute administrators. New club being formed at NFA was brought to our attention, and we discussed teachers on special assignments, tenure recommendations, and then we went to executive session.
Thank you. Mr. Menuda, Audit and Finance.
Thank you. We had a pretty robust meeting at Audit and Finance. We had taken a look at the National IPA cooperative purchasing for foods, and basically the suggestion that we go forward with that as far as looking into it further. It does not affect any of our local vendors for purchase of bread, milk, produce, etc. It's really more of a buying power. It streamlines the process internally and is a much better method and way of going to purchasing for a district of this size. So that was number one. We had the Ridge project came in, which is, you may be familiar, it's had several different hats and visions over the years, under 300 across the Newburgh Mall. They come to us, we presented their plan. They have also presented that they're looking for a pilot, which means although there would be an increase if they do the project to the district, it's not as sizable as it would be if it was a full-blown, which is part of the pilot program itself. So essentially, there is an increase to the district, but it's not as great as we might hope it would be. We're still talking with them, and it was a very good discussion. Spring athletic transportation bids, that I believe is on tonight's agenda. Yes, that's good. Thank you. So that was the last week of March, and that's on for tonight. We have a resolution to accept furniture generously from the Washington School District, which is donated desks. They will be used in our district. A resolution to declare books obsolete. It's standard, and it's position the same. Accept donation of Promethean. They have opted to donate the Promethean boards that we have in the conference room for our approval. That's the one where you touch the screen and it's basically there. The Newburgh Crew, Friends of Newburgh Crew, we have received a grant, which was amazing that they got it. This is about a $100,000 grant, as I recall. And it was for donation of equipment to be used by our crew team. I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and I'm blown away by it, to be honest with you. That a group of people, parents, and students could get together and get this grant and actually get new equipment for this team, I thought was just amazing. So that's that piece of it. The resolution for an executive agreement for Hudson Valley Speech and Swallowing Therapy is also came to us. That is being looking to be approved for on this agenda. And we have a resolution for real estate agreements, statistical analysis with the Friends of Newburgh Crew, Inc. The Regal Bag property, which many of us may know has been sort of abandoned, big, large property. Was that Water Street or River Road? Water. Thank you. Essentially, they have been so generous, Mr. Kaplan and that crew, to have provided a launch point for Newburgh Crew, Friends of Newburgh Crew. well as there's gonna be a few, storage facilities and so forth for the equipment. So that's that. Don't want to belabor this too much, but I think there's a lot of good information that was here. We have resolution for Clark Patterson Lee for pre-revenue services. There was another proposal for Clark Patterson Lee for NFA West. Resolution to approve tax fund refunds for court orders, which you all know my feeling on that. It is what it is. Our kids need money, end of story, so stop getting your tax refunds. Anyway, there's some software repair that was being done, some additional project budget for window replacement in Foster Town School, and then increases for both budgets for the next board agenda. Cross reports are being submitted to New York at the state SED. Lastly but not least, the Regal Bag is having a makeover. It's being re-established as a different type of building, and they are seeking some tax rates on what's called a 485 rate. So those are the things that we discussed. If you'd like to know more about it, I suggest you attend our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menuda. We're going to move on to the Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Ford.
I have one item this evening, Madam President. It is the recommendation from CSE and CPSE committees.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Teneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my item.
Thank you, Mr. Fortune. We're going to move on to the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Mrs. Felice.
Good evening, Madam President. To begin with item 7.1, with a request to amend the items 2 and 3 on the list of conference requests to include substitutes for those teachers.
So first, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Right now, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Now, I'd like to have a roll call on whether or not to amend.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Teneo?
Yes. Okay, now we have an amended resolution on the floor. Any questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Teneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Item 7.2 is the resolution to authorize the superintendent to purchase Apple iPads for Templeville Academy's grade 3 and grade 4.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Teneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Item 7.3 is a resolution to authorize the superintendent to purchase professional development materials from the Balance Between Incorporated for Meadow Hill School.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Teneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Item 7.4 is a resolution to authorize the superintendent to purchase professional development materials from BRI Incorporated.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston? Ms. Teneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes our CNI items.
Thank you, Mrs. Felice. We're going to move on to the Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Mr. Crowe.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 8.1, resolution to accept bills and reports.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston? Ms. Teneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Skiddire?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Item 8.2, Resolution to approve spring athletic transportation bids.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Menuda.
I see there's a large amount of no bids in these spreadsheets. Have you talked to the bus companies to find out why they're not bidding at all on certain runs?
Yes, we did discuss it with the companies, that a lot of the trips are going out during their prime time, they're being concerned taking students home. So they were trying to figure out how they're going to manage the trips. So we had conversations with them, they did come back with some other pricing.
So that'll,
They'll be able to.
Mr. Menuda?
I guess I have a general statement with regard to busing, regarding these and other items. I'm good with the bids. I want to ensure that we're getting what we pay for. And that would include timeliness in pickup and scheduling, and not to allow our teachers and staff and administration and everyone else to have to stay after work because they are not meeting our expectation of the contract. So, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Stritter?
as a follow-up to that, do we have written record of latencies on buses, and is that looked at on a weekly basis?
We do have record, and the board will receive the trimester report this Friday and weekly, and part of that will be information about transportation.
There is, though, a sort of chronic problem at West still, so we're working on that, and too, we're working on that. Any other questions or comments? Where are we? Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes?
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Rokoff?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Amito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Item 8.3, resolution to approve facilities use request.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Stritter?
I noticed on the first item, the lacrosse, I saw on social media there was some kind of a scrimmage or some kind of practice on lacrosse on the academy field. Is that something that's scheduled, or is that common? I thought we would just use the field for games.
No, we agreed that only the priority will go to in-season sports. So only those sports that are currently in the spring season would have access, with the exception of probably football, so that they can have opportunities to practice on the field. But lacrosse makes sense because it's their season right now.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes, and the lacrosse, the way it was explained to me was, they were practicing on that because the other fields were so wet.
Yes.
And once they dried out, then they would be doing their practice in there. But they were playing their games, of course, at the field. I'm glad to see that we're hosting the championship. That's a good thing. Because that usually doesn't come to Newburgh. It usually goes out to Middletown or to other districts. And this is like a Section 9 or championships, right? So I'm glad to see that.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Mineo?
Yes?
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Rokoff?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Amito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Item 8.4, resolution to approve property tax refund pursuant to court order.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Menuda?
No.
Ms. Rokoff?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. Amito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
That concludes finance for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. We're going to move on to the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McElroy.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, items A through G, we have on the professional side, we have appointments, change of status, leave of absence, retirement. And on the civil service side, we have appointments, change of status, resignation, and a former employee who's passed away.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Item 9.2 is a resolution to approve RISE appointments.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Item 9.3 is a resolution to abolish one FTE senior library clerk and create one FTE library assistant.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Item 9.4 is a resolution to approve the district holiday.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Madam President, I would like to request permission at this time to table item 9.5.
May I have a motion to table, please?
So moved.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston? Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bocock? Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Item 9.6 is a resolution to approve substitute administrators.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston? Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Item 9.7 is for your information only. It's administrators and administrators and teachers will be coming up for tenure in the next several months. This includes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from the March 21st, 2017 meeting.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
If there's anybody interested in running for the board, there's still time. Packets are due back, all petitions are due back in my office by April 26th by 5 p.m. So if you're interested, you can stop by my office at any time and pick up a packet. In addition, if you're interested in voting by absentee ballot, absentee applications can be printed off the district website, and those will need to be turned into the clerk's office. 7 days prior to the election, I can mail it out to you. Otherwise, if you bring it in after that, I can hand you a ballot. The seats open for this year's election are held by currently Mr. Strittmayer, Ms. Maneo, and there's now a vacancy on the board. So the top vote getter this year will start the day after the election. Election's on May 16th. The board will certify the vote on May 17th, and then the highest vote getter will start immediately. If you need anything else, you can always contact the clerk's office, and that concludes my answer, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We're now at the portion of the agenda for public discussion on non-agenda items. Please refer to the procedure sheet next to the sign-in sheet. We have no one signed up. Would anybody like to address the board on non-agenda items? Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Menuda? Yes. Ms. Bocock?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Devano?
Yes.
Ms. D'Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?